What's happening, everybody? Let's go. BT Unleashed in the house. We got a lot to get to, obviously. A little Harbaugh, Mets making moves, a little Hall of Fame. All right, so, yesterday was a fantastic day for the Giants. That's all there is to it. There was a clear message. There was a man who was in control of the franchise. It was just really, really good. I thought that John Harbaugh was phenomenal. And he starts this out and he says, quote, "I wanted this job," which is just, pump that oxygen, pump that light, give it – just vein it up. If you're a Giant fan, how are you not feeling phenomenal about this? Really, guys, it was the culmination of a really buttoned up, very diligent, very professional, I think in certain areas, fairly stealth operation by the Giants that, quite frankly, I'm not alone in believing this. I'm not so sure that they were really capable of doing that anymore. Really, just everything came together. And then yesterday was the prize when you tried out the new head coach of the New York Football Giants. He said that a few times, which I know you love. He's like, it's not the Giants, it's the New York Football Giants. My dad taught me that. His dad's a former coach, him and Jim, two maniacs. Imagine those guys when they're 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. They must have beat the shit out of each other. Two incredibly competitive guys. So it's really just a winning situation. Now, listen, this doesn't guarantee anything. This doesn't mean that, you hired Pat Riley like the Knicks did back in the 90s, or, Parcells to the Jets, even though the Jets didn't win, neither did the Knicks. I think that you can have a little bit of everything. I don't think that John Harbaugh is an A-plus coach. I think he's a really, really, really good coach. But more importantly, guys, I think that John Harbaugh is the absolute perfect coach at the perfect time for the New York Giants to pull them out of this abyss and really get them to a place where, going into the next however many seasons he's here, hopefully it's, a decade plus. He wants to coach for a long time. He's got a lengthy contract, as we know. And all you can do is really react to, what he said and how the Giants presented themselves and how the Giants made sure they got this done organizationally, and really just judge them on what they were looking for, because the mission of the search here was very, very clearly stated. Number one, they were looking for a leader of men, check. Number two, they were looking for somebody that was capable of captivating a locker room and really rallying players and just building that morale up, check. You listen to this guy talk for a minute, you want to run through a brick wall for him. You really do. And the third thing was somebody who's going to restore accountability within the players and within the building, check. There were a lot of players there. It's just one of those moments where, there's a lot to do. Obviously, you got to hit the draft. You got to obviously, you got to bring in some reinforcements. Like there's a reason why the Giants have been really bad for a really long time. But just there's something to be said about an infectious delivery, an inspiring delivery. And, I don't know. Certainly Tomlin would have had that if Tomlin was up there yesterday. But I think there's very few men in the NFL that would be able to galvanize an entire fan base the way John Harbaugh has so clearly done. Even if they would have rolled out Belichick, I'm not so sure that would have, because the messaging and the demeanor would have been a little bit different. Sure, he's a more accomplished coach than John Harbaugh, but this is going to take a lot of energy. And somebody like Belichick, I'm not sure if he's got that at this point. I think it's, is it a home run? I'm going to stop a little short of saying it's a home run, but it's an incredible hire. And I really laud the Giants. I laud the Giants because the Giants could have messed this up a million ways sideways. Like the Giants could have allowed Dable to kind of languish and, let him finish out the season. Well, they had a good first year. Let's show them a little bit of respect. And as you're doing that, as you're messing around, other teams are lining up their ducks and they're getting things ready. So when they decided to make the firing of Dable official during the season, that allowed them to, really begin to put their plan in place and, more importantly, start to act on it. So this was just very swift. Listen, there were obviously a couple of moments over the weekend. I know some Giant fans were getting a little worried. I never thought it wouldn't happen. Contracts, especially at this level, they're complex, they're detailed. You got to dot every I. And I'm not just talking about the money. Really, it was the power thing. And, gets us to Joe Shane. Poor Joe Shane had a rough day. Poor Joe Shane had a really rough day. Listen, everybody's already said it at this point. He seemed nervous. He seemed a little bit out of sorts. He seemed not quite fully in control. And I know what John said, that it's a collaboration. I know what John Harbaugh. I know what John Mara said. I know what Chris Mara said as well. Make no mistake about it. If there is something that, If there is a debate on a player, whether it's at 5 or they trade up or they trade down, whatever it might be, John Harbaugh is going to win that, period. If there's a debate on a free agent that they're pursuing, and John Harbaugh says this and Joe Shane and others think that, John Harbaugh is going to win. If there's, and he should, I mean, that's why he's here. If there's somebody in the building that is going to be a free agent or they might want to just get rid of, and maybe there's some people who have some more emotional investment in that player. They drafted him. They've been around that player for a little bit. But John Harbaugh does not view that player as somebody who's going to buy in or doesn't like the tape, whatever it might be. John Harbaugh communicates that. And even with some resistance maybe from others in the room, John Harbaugh wins that as well. And that's what you want. You want no doubt who's in charge, who's got the juice, who's got the hammer, and it's John Harbaugh. Now, not to really get too deeply into this, but because today's really not the day to do it extensively. I already did it when they were going through the process, and, I was making a case for McCarthy as well. And I think they're pretty much the same guy in terms of resume. I know that they project very differently. I know there's a different energy. I know there's certainly a different perception between Harbaugh and McCarthy. But the one thing that we know really plagued the Giants a year ago was them just flushing lead after lead after lead after lead down the chute. And I do think it's worth reiterating here. It doesn't mean that John Harbaugh's not going to win, because when Coughlin came here, his Jaguar teams had success, but never the ultimate success, okay? And Harbaugh's already got a ring, so he's already proven that he could do it. But since 2021, and this is interesting, because you've had Lamar Jackson, you've had an MVP, you've had one of the most dynamic players in the game, and you've had somebody that has been really capable of elevating a franchise. Dart did it a little bit this year, and hopefully more and more and more. But Lamar, Josh Allen, Burrow when he's healthy, Burrow when he's got a defense, like those kind of players are obviously going to take an average product and make it really good, and make a really good product championship viable. However, since 2021, the Ravens lost 12 games while leading by 7+ points or more in the fourth quarter. And that's the most in NFL history in any 5-year span. So you can go back to the 70s when the Vikings were going to all those Super Bowls, or the Steelers were winning those Super Bowls, or the Cowboys were doing their thing, or the Bills in the 80s were getting to all those Super Bowls but not winning, or the Giants were winning a couple with Parcells and LT. Any iteration of any team, you will not find a team, and by extension, you won't find the coach whose team under his watch, under his football jurisdiction, blew more fourth quarter games leads, 7+ points or more, than John Harbaugh. Now, is that all John Harbaugh's fault? I'm not necessarily saying that that's the case, but it's on his resume, and it's something that's real, and it's something that he's going to have to exercise very early. And, we'll get a sense of how active they are in free agency, and, what positions they attack in the draft. Are they trying to build the offense up more? I think they can go receiver, pair him with Neighbors, obviously go in that direction. You get Cam back, you get a better offensive line, you get a decent tight end room. You got Jackson Dart year 2, they have better coaching, whatever, more experience. Like, the Giants offense has a chance to be really good kind of soon, because they were actually pretty good in a lot of spots this year. So they can go that route, or they could just double down and just go defense, and go safety, go linebacker, go corner, and say to themselves, all right, our offense is fine now. Let's take the assets, whether it's the Burns trade or the drafting of other players, Kayvon Thibodeau, or the extension of somebody like Dexter Lawrence and a few others, where you can just look to build a lights-out defense. Personally, I'd kind of attack both, because I think there's enough weaknesses on both sides, but that's down the road. That's draft talk down the road. It's more about a concept. It's more about a philosophy. And at least pertaining to yesterday, it's really about somebody who just stepped to the podium. And I really thought that John Harbaugh struck the perfect balance of being in control, being humble in terms of wanting to be there, speaking with reverence about the Giants, speaking with reverence about ownership, referencing his dad and what his dad, impressed upon him, and I'm sure by extension his brother Jim, about the New York Football Giants growing up, but clearly in control, little witty, little funny, little serious when he needed to be. Like, we're not here to mess around, man. Like, we're going to attack this with unrelenting vigor or passion. What's the expression that the Harbaughs use? Passion unknown to man. And that's a real thing. And I know that for some people, that sounds corny. Not to me. I think if the results are there and you say that, well, then I think that it's working. It's meshing. And I remember going back to his brother Jim. So when I go to San Francisco after 10:50 and I get out there in 20, I guess it was 2011 and 2012, and the Niners were really, really, really down. And my first show, I'm doing an afternoon drive, August 1st, we launched this new station on FM when stations were just starting to go to FM, right? And we had Deion Sanders on, who I got into an argument with actually, because it was ridiculous. All I said, I was having fun. It was toward the middle of it's like this first thing I hit him with, but it was, I think, was it Steph Curry? It was Deion. No, it was Deion, Bruce Bochy, the manager of the Giants, and Jim Harbaugh, right? And the Deion thing real quick, then I'll get back to what's really important. But he was talking about the Niners, like how they need to start, playing with more aggression and more tackling. And I'm like, and I mean, in hindsight, actually, I thought it was funny. I mean, I wouldn't take it back, and I thought I inserted it at the perfect place because he knew my partner, because he played with him on the Niners, Eric Davis. And I thought we had a pretty jovial tone to the conversation. I'm like, I said something along the lines of like, who are you to talk about tackling? You never want to tackle Deion. Come on. And he got pissed and it kind of got derailed a little bit. But shortly there, just a little funny side story. Shortly thereafter, I had Jim Harbaugh on, right? We had him on for 20, 30 minutes. And, I knew him obviously from Stanford and how he elevated that product. And, his little beef and his rivalry with Pete Carroll when Stanford USC was huge. I knew him as a player. I knew him as an intense competitor. And he comes on, and that's one of the things that he was espousing, exactly what John said yesterday. Like, we're going to attack every day, like, with unrelenting vigor and vigor and passion, unknown to man. And I'm sitting there to myself, to an extent, saying, all right, this is a little corny, man. I mean, this is not high school. This is not, let's win one for the Gipper. This is the NFL. Guys making millions. Is that message really going to fly? And it really did. And I really do believe that if you believe it and you live it, more importantly, which John Harbaugh absolutely does and will continue to do, that is a man of pride. That is a man of focus. That is a man of conviction. That is a man of football sensibility. That is a man with broad shoulders who is able to deflect all the nonsense that's going to hit the Giants at some point, because it hits everybody, especially in New York. Even when you're doing well, he'll diffuse it. Perfect hire. Really, I think just a perfect hire at the right time. But when you live by that mantra, that really does, even if there's a couple of guys who are on the team kind of looking around saying, oh, this cornball, what's going on? I don't even think that they'll say that, but there might be a few who do that, kind of roll their eyes. All right, whatever, man, let's go practice, right? Well, first of all, those guys will be gone because John Harbaugh's inner, is like, you have a quarterback clock. His coaching clock is really good. The really good coaches, the first thing you got to do is find out who wants to put in the extra work. Like who's going to roll up their sleeves, who's a foxhole guy. Before you get to building the perfect roster, it starts with a mindset. And then eventually, when you have what you believe is the perfect roster, now the mindset has already permeated the entire building, and that's the expectation. And if you're not living it, then you're not sticking around. You're out. And then once a couple of players get bounced, and trust me, they will, well, then the guys who maybe want to stay around and hang out in the New York area and play for the New York Giants and play for one of these great franchises, organizations, well, then you get your act together or you get booted to the curb. So I think the way that starts is by projecting what he projected yesterday. It's not bullshit. It's not nonsense. It's not, let me throw a little phrase out there like Robert Saleh did on Hard Knocks with the Falcons and the birds and the bees and the worms, whatever stupid analogy that he was trying to hit. It was so corny and it was so weak, right? And it didn't work, right? So, and I hope that Saleh learns from that and becomes a better coach 2.0. And I think he will. I better find a quarterback, but I think that he will in terms of being the real quarterback. I think Cam could be. Matter of fact, I think there's a better chance that he will be than he won't be, just to clarify that. I'm a fan of Cam Ward. But, until you see it on a regular basis, that's going to be the determining factor as to whether or not he wins or anybody wins. Same with John Harbaugh. So here's a guy who walks up to the podium with a massive contingent of media and former Giants and current Giants. I think there was it's like 220 people there. I mean, that's a big room. It's a big room to walk. And the moment that he stepped up to the podium, he pumped life and he pumped oxygen into the lungs and he pumped passion into the veins of the building and the fan base. So just a win, really good stuff. And I'm very interested to see where, the first couple of moves and where they go, but that I'm still laughing at the passion unknown to man. The way you do that, and the way that becomes a real thing and not some corny contrived nonsense, right? Is that you just the smallest things like a meeting, an off-season gathering, like that's the expectation, and then you've got to lean on your coaching instincts to determine who's in and who's not. And one thing about, and I think the modern athlete gets knocked around a little bit. I really do. I think some of it's justified because I think not all. But I think too many modern athletes are all about me, me, me. Look at me on Instagram. Look at me wearing this ridiculously dumb outfit into the arena or the stadium like Burrow or, some of these guys in the NBA that wear sweaters that are literally nine sizes too big down to their knees. Like some guys are wearing heels. Like, I don't know. I don't know what the hell's going on, man. If that was me, I'm not saying I wouldn't want to look good. I can promise you I wouldn't look like that. But the knock that a lot of the younger players get, and I've talked to Rick Pitino about this, right? Even with the NIL, good win by St. John's last night. I'll hit them a little bit at the end, very little, right? But a good win because that would have derailed a lot of the good they did the last week and a half or so, getting those quad one wins and building up their resume. Really important win, even though they looked awful in the first half. They were down by 15. So I've talked to Rick about this. And I was even of the mindset that athletes have changed, right? Well, why wouldn't you be? Because it just seems like, everybody's bouncing around. Let me join this super team. Let me circumvent the hard way and go the easy route. Look at me, the glorification of me, LeBron with his powder, me, me, me. It does drive me nuts to an extent, right? Some of the stupid social media beefs and social media tweets, like, good God almighty, just focus on your craft, man. It's getting out of hand. But what Rick told me, and others by extension, is that it's really not that the athletes change so much. It's what's changed around the athlete. All right. And listen, I'm so far past that stage of wanting to walk into an arena looking like a rock star or a rap star or an actor or whatever the hell these guys look like. But yeah, I'm sure if I was younger, maybe I'm not being sincere to this conversation. If I was 23, I still don't think I would do that. But that doesn't mean that they don't want to be coached hard. And I think that that's the misperception, that because whether it's college making, $1 million, $2, $3, $4 million, if you're a quarterback in certain spots, $10 million for NIL money, that they don't want to be told what to do. I actually don't think that fundamentally the mindset of the athlete has really changed that much. I think a lot of it is the noise around the athlete, as I said. And let's face it, if there weren't all these networks with these cameras zooming in on these guys and then showing them walking into the arena and then walking into the stadium, well, then maybe they wouldn't play it up as much and it wouldn't get as much, as much run. So in a lot of ways, I think they're just beholden to what these networks are kind of asking them to do. But if you are a coach who is well principled and you can connect to a player, I don't care if you're a white kid from the sticks, I don't care if you're a black kid from the inner city. I don't care if you're a white kid from the inner city. I don't care if you're a black kid from the sticks. I don't care if you're religious, if you're an atheist. It doesn't matter what you are, what your sexual proclivity is. If you want to win, right? And you, more importantly, you trust that person that is trying to coach you up, they will still put out the effort that's required, that I think a lot of you really there's no way that that's true. Get the hell out of here. I mean, hold on. Timeout. Let me get a 20-second timeout here. All right. So let me get my guy J-Rod in here for a little moment. I've got the J-Rod quiz. What's up, brother? How you doing?
How's it going? Yeah. I'm alive. We're still living.
Yeah. Well, for now, we got the J-Rod test a little later. So what the hell was that? I mean, that's not true.
The comments are kind of popping off with this, but based on Twitter and just like any news sources I'm kind of scanning through, I'm not seeing anything yet. But now,
I'm going to told me they came with like a 9-year deal, which would still make no sense. Like, the guy's 30 years old. What are they going to give him a contract till he's 45 freaking years old? Come on, J-Rod, watch what we put up on the screen there, brother.
I mean, listen, he tossed the $5. You got to throw it up.
Yeah, something like that. You got to toss $5,000 to get that idiocy read. All right, bro. I'm going to get back to you. Don't worry. I'm coming with the J-Rod test, and we will determine maybe as a group if we allow J-Rod to stick around to continue to produce, and do what he's doing, which he's off to a good start. Although that Mattingly moment obviously gave you a little bit of pause. So, Jay, we'll get back to you, buddy. I appreciate it, man. But I do think that no matter where you're from, no matter, what we might think about some of these young athletes, right? And I know it's been kind of hijacked and it's been a little misrepresented. That's why I make it my business to talk to people that have been in the game forever, like somebody like Rick Pitino, who in 87, basically, if he told Billy Donovan to run, 9 mountains and then jog, if you go, fly to Hawaii and jump in a volcano to help the Providence Friars get to the Final Four, Billy Donovan was doing it. And now that there's an association or there's a thought that the athletes are less about the level of compete and the championship pursuit and more about the, I don't know, some of the spoils that come with being an athlete. And some are, but by the way, some were so back in the, some were like that back in the day. So I think somebody like John Harbaugh, why he's going to work here, and I believe work at a very high level, is because his message is authentic. You're going to see him in the weight room. You're going to see him. He is going to be real with you. And I just really think that's what young kids want. I think young kids want to be coached hard. I think young kids, they might not want it or they might not know that they want it. But I think deep down, their instincts tell them, even if they resist it outwardly as parents, I think deep down, kids want to be parented properly and parented hard. I think structure is great, and I think structure still works. But you got to be a real one. If you're a phony, you're going to be sniffed out in a heartbeat, and you're done. And that's why I really do think, I'm not trying to bag on Robert Saleh, but I think what he presented was not really his authentic self, and I hope he's true to himself with his next job here, because I think there's a lot of good qualities in there, and that comes with being experienced and failing and lifting yourself off the mat and looking in the mirror and assessing and addressing and then changing ultimately what you need to ultimately change to get better. And I think he'll do that because I think he's a smart guy and I think he's a good football person. But I just think that, he was out of sorts. And I think you contrast that to, some of the recent Giant coaches, to bring it back to Harbaugh. It's obviously not about Saleh. It's just a point of reference. But Shermer just didn't have any real presence. I mean, Judge he thought he was Belichick to an extent. He talked himself out of that job. Although Dable really showed some good early signs, going for 2 against Tennessee, direct, no bullshit, kind of old school, hardcore, which I liked. But then, friction with Wink and a little friction here and a little uncertainty there. He just couldn't escape all the losses. That's why I think somebody like Dable, if he goes somewhere, and he will, and he's the OC, and they score a lot of points, and he gets another job, I think if Brian Dable could have some early success at his next head coaching job, I think Brian Dable's got a chance to be a really, really good coach, because I do think that he's got that connectivity that players crave, that I think that they need. They just want to know that you care about them. And you show that a lot of different ways, but I think that's one of John Harbaugh's greatest assets. I think that John Harbaugh is the best X's and O's strategist in football, I think that's wrong, as evidenced by the fact since 2021, during a 5-year span, he's got the most blown fourth quarter leads of 7 or more points in any 5-year span in the history of the NFL. Like somebody like Belichick, who knows the rule book backwards and forwards and sideways and up and down, that's not happening. So I'm not saying it's all John Harbaugh's fault, but there's a little weakness in there. But I think that the overall strengths, the demeanor, the presentation, the presence, the conviction, the reverence for the franchise, the demanding of a high level of accountability and effort. Those are 2 very different things. Like, you could work your ass off, right? You could be in a weight room. You could be running. You can come in great shape. You could be diligent in the playbook, right? So you could put the work in where nobody could question your work ethic, but you still have to be able, and this is hard for kids, but young kids, you still have to be able to own the failures. And you could be a beast of a worker, but, kind of deflect. I was there. I did my job. Like, we're not looking for that. We're looking for a teammate. We're looking for a guy who's a foxhole guy. And if you're doing this, pointing, at somebody rather than thumb to the chest, you're not a Harbaugh kind of guy, and you will absolutely be gone, period. So just a really, really, really good day. It was fun. Guys like that excite me. I wish I had a few more coaches like that when I was younger. I really do. I mean, my dad coached me. My dad was great. My high school coaches were tough. I had 2 college coaches. My college coach who recruited me got fired after my junior year. Rest in peace. Really good guy. We had some friction, but to me, he was he let us get away with too much. And when you give not that I didn't work, I did, but not everybody did. And when you give college kids that kind of freedom and you trust them too much, it's going to get away from you. And it got away from him, and it cost him his job. Whereas the next guy who came in, who was my manager for my senior year, is now the manager at Virginia Tech. And he's one of the highest paid coaches in college baseball. Before that, he went to Maryland, and he elevated them to heights they hadn't been to since 1979. His name was John Sheff. I can never spell his name. Scefz. I mean, a guy shows up, and he played at UConn a little bit. He played at Drexel. He was a coach, so he worked his way up, obviously. And he comes to us this is what I mean. Like, you just know when somebody's not fucking around. The first day of practice, first of all, he's jacked, right? And he's still jacked. And he's got this buzz cut, kind of like military Chris Mullin flat top. And he's running with us. And he's lifting with us. And you're like, man, I wish I had more time with this guy. And then, not by coincidence. And really, at Marist, we lost a lot. I lost a lot more than I won at Marist. Every year was a losing season. Part of the reason why my gentleman who recruited me was fired. And John came in, and through attention to detail and through connecting, through hard work, through accountability, of course, crack the joke, the year after I leave, this happens. The year after I left, they went to the NCAA tournament. And you don't think I hear it from my buddies when I see them, like they got their rings. I'm like, I missed out on a year. By the way, if I'm still on the team and if I'm still playing the way I did before, in terms of playing time, we wouldn't have been an NCAA team. He brought in better players. That's the reality of the world, right? I could accept that now. And they went on to beat, they lost to J.D. Drew 2-1 in the regionals. J.D. Drew, first round pick, insane. They beat Nebraska. They beat some good teams along the way. And then they went on a run where they made the NCAA tournament 5 of 6 years, something like that. And then, of course, he moved on, Maryland, and then eventually Virginia Tech. So, great coaches are just great coaches. I say that not to give you the rundown of how much I lost in Marist, but really the effect that one man had on pretty much the same roster. Because even though I had him for 1 year, the year that I had him, we won the most games in school history. And then the next year they made the tournament without me and whatever, and with much better players than me. And he just had a different mindset. He had a different mantra, and he demanded different things. And Harbaugh's the same way. So congrats to the Giants. They crushed it. Everybody was involved. I'm happy for John Mara. I thought Chris Mara was really important here. Tisch obviously had a role. And, hey, what do you need? We're not going to start you low and negotiate up and bullshit around. We're going to start you at 18-5, just in terms of a respectful negotiation point, just to let you know how much we want you. And we know we'll go up from there, which they did a little bit. What do you need for your staff? All right, we got that. We'll cut the check. What do you need? Private jet, family. We'll fly your family back to, I believe they're in Michigan, I think, wherever his parents are. We'll fly your wife back to Baltimore after this, and you do what you got to do. Everything was done first rate. And I think what's really good about this, even Coughlin calling, Dable calling, Eli calling, this was a massive coalescing of very important aspects of the Giants to prove to somebody who wanted to believe that the Giants are still the Giants. And that they could still, they can be perceived as the Giants, the way John Harbaugh and older coaches perceive the Giants. So great stuff. Now, home run is a Super Bowl, so I'm not going to quite say that, but it's a stand-up triple. And you would have to think that at some point, especially if Jackson Dart's the guy, that this team will be in, and I believe he is, in NFC championship games. I'm not saying next year, but before you know it. And they'll win 10, 11, 12, and eventually, Dallas or the Commanders or the Eagles will be looking up at the Giants, you hope, in the standings, because this man wins, knows how to win, and he knows how to excite, and he knows how to resuscitate, I believe, what is, until proven otherwise, a moribund franchise. Good job, Giants. All right, let me get to this here. By the way, I'll get the Giant comments. As you, Jared, feel free to pop them in if something, makes sense, whatever. Let me know, because obviously I want to dive into my notes here. I want to get to a few more things. Now, the Baseball Hall of Fame, all right? So, it's lost its luster, and I'm not going to just go on a diatribe as to why. We all know why, because the barriers have been lowered. What you had to be back in the day to be enshrined in baseball's Hall of Fame and gain that level of immortality, it's lowered. And there's nothing to debate about that. When you have somebody like Harold Baines and, Don Sutton and Burt Blyleven, all really good players, varying degrees of individual success. I get it, but they're all kind of cut from the same cloth. None of them were great. They were, I think Baines was the worst of the three. There's no way Baines should be in. Please. Like, that was the last frontier. Harold Baines is a Hall of Famer. You better at some point find a way to open a door for Donnie and maybe Keith and some others, Dale Murphy. Like, what are we doing here? So I could do 10 hours on that. I won't. I want to keep it current. So yesterday, in his fourth year of eligibility, Beltran gets in as we thought he would, 84.5%, whatever it was. Listen, when you see, and there was actually some debate, not yesterday, but leading up to after his retirement, and some of it was maybe with the Astros and his role in the cheating scandal, whatever. Put that aside, right? When you're a 9-time All-Star, you got 3 Gold Gloves in a premium position, probably could add a 4th or a 5th as well, and you've got almost 450 home runs, and you've got, basically 2,800 hits. There's really not a whole lot to discuss. I can understand if you're still married to the benchmarks. Well, didn't hit 500 home runs. Well, didn't have 3,000 hits. That's a bit antiquated for me. But there was enough there, even like I knew he was going to get in, and he should. And it's awesome. And he's going to wear a Met hat in, which will be good. But when you see this stat, right? How about this? One of four players with 2,700 hits or more, 400 home runs or more, 1,500 runs scored or more, and 300 stolen bases or more. The other guys, Bonds, Willie Mays, Alex Rodriguez. You're a Hall of Famer. Next. Congrats to him. Class act, hell of a player. Good stuff. Andrew Jones, right? So I always thought that Andrew Jones was a Hall of Famer. A lot of people, and I know that the numbers, like, very top-heavy, like he was really, really, really amazing, and then the numbers really start to drop off and dissipate, and he lost his way, whatever. He squeaked in. He got, 78.5%, so a little more than 3.5%, right around 3.5% of the requisite number, 75%. Now, this was his 9th year in terms of eligibility, and you look at some of the accolades for Andrew Jones. He's one of 6 outfielders, one of 6 in the history of baseball to win 10 or more Gold Gloves in the outfield. And he's got almost 450 home runs. And he was on a really awesome team, even though they didn't win as much as they should, partly because of the Yankees. That Braves team was phenomenal, right? So I got no problem with Andrew Jones getting in. Here's my issue. Like, the candidacy, I'm just very confused by this, right? So Beltran should have gotten in. He did. Jones should have gotten in. He did. But can somebody explain to me, all right, how on your first year of eligibility, his first year, which was almost a decade ago, he had this and then one more. And if he didn't get it this year and he didn't get it next year, it would have been punted to whatever the hell they call that next level of possible Hall of Fame. Like Mattingly just didn't get in and all that stuff, right? So how can you get 7.3% of the votes on his first year of eligibility? Less than 8%, which is what he got. Which, by the way, is the lowest starting mark of any eventual enshrinee. Nobody in the hollowed halls of Cooperstown got lower than Andrew Jones did and then eventually make the Hall of Fame. So can somebody very succinctly please explain to me in very basic terms? I've got theories, but I'm curious what you guys think. How can you when you get 7% of the vote, you're basically positioned as an afterthought. He's got no shot. 7%. No chance. And then how does the math go from 7.3% to 78.4%? That's my fundamental, aside from guys getting in who shouldn't, and he's not one of them, but the math is just fuzzy. Fuzzy math. The math is too unclear. It's too nebulous. It's too all over the place. It's too without definition. It's without definition, and it's really without logic, and it's without rhyme or reason. That makes no sense to me. 7.3%, almost 80%. What? I mean, I can see if you start out at like 46%, then you got maybe steroids on the resume, or, you start out in the low 40s, really, really good player, maybe a borderline Hall of Famer, and then you incrementally inch your way up to the 75% threshold. This doesn't make any sense. And it's not about Andrew Jones. He should be in. He shouldn't have gotten 7% when he was first eligible 9 years ago. That's the joke of it. But then the market correction, it really, really leaves me lost. Now, some other things that went down yesterday with the what I perceive to be very favorable trends, which will set up some of these guys to eventually get in, right? And you can, it's always fun to ask yourself, like, I'm gonna name a couple of players. Yeah, I mean, Michael Mara dash V9G. Might as well put Bernie and O'Neill in the Hall of Fame now. O'Neill's not a Hall of Famer. You can make more of a case for Bernie, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. So Chase Utley was up 19%. Thanks for the text there, buddy. Andy Pettit, who I'll get more into, was up 21%. Felix Hernandez up 25.5%. Bobby Abreu up 11%. I mean, there is no planet, none, that Bobby Abreu is a Hall of Famer. But I'm just giving you the numbers. But then again, if you looked at the 7.3 number that Jones got back in the day, you'd say he's not getting in. But then again, if you actually saw him play, as many of us did, you wouldn't lean on the math. You lean on your eyes. See, to me, the first barometer, the first gauge is, I really just asked myself, was this guy a Hall of Famer? And there are certain people, like, I think Don Sutton came up in the 60s. Same with Burt Blyleven. I didn't see them. Like, I saw those guys at the tail end. I remember vaguely Don Sutton pitching in the 81 World Series against the Yankees in that Dodger-Yankee series, which the Dodgers won. So, you know, and I remember, like, hearing his name and maybe getting his baseball card, or, I don't know, he's pitching against the Mets and he's on Kinder's corner if he has a good game, whatever. Like, yeah, but I like, there are times where I will, to reinforce my opinion, or to be clear, to further shape it with more defined numbers. But my first thing will be my instinct. This guy, a Hall of Famer. If I didn't see him play, numbers will be more important to me. If I did see him play, they'll be less important. Although, obviously, I can use that to contextualize either favorably or not, based on what I come up with, based on the player. So, I mean, Bobby Abreu, stop. But he's up 11.5%. Dustin Pedroia, stop. He's up 8.5%. Now, this is my problem with baseball, right? And you've heard this a lot. How can you write, pertaining to a lot of different teams and a lot of different players, how can you write the history of sport X without player Y? Like, think about that. If you don't reward, whether it's some sort of Hall of Fame acknowledgement or retirement of their number, or a monument if you're the Yankees, whatever it might be, how could the team have had the success that they did if player X was not part of the equation? And this gets me to Andy Pettit. I really don't understand it. I mean, you want to tell me a little bit of HGH? Okay. All right. I mean, I'd put Alex in, I'd put Bonds in, I'd put Clemens in, I'd put them all in. I mean, that's the problem too, because that's their fault that they cheated. And you know, Alex has owned up to it. Roger's been dodging it, and same with Bonds. At least Alex has the spine to look us in the eyes and say, yeah, I messed up. And I give him a lot of credit for that. You know, Alex versus A-Rod, discussions I've had with Alex, like, you know, he could have easily taken the, you know, the side door like Bonds and Clemens and just kind of fall off into baseball oblivion and say, nah, man, well, I didn't do anything. There's no evidence, no proof. What? So he didn't take that route, which I appreciate. And he also got caught a few times. So I don't know if he really had much of a choice, but to own it and to be as forthright as he and as humble as Alex has become, I think that's a beautiful thing. Not just for a player who was implicated in something, for a human being, you know, attached to any aspect of life. It could be anything, not just, you know, PEDs. But anyway, Andy Pettit. So I know that I watched Andy Pettit. First of all, I watched him win 5 championships, number one. So you start with that. And I know that he wasn't always quite the ace. And I know that there were other, like it was Cone early. El Duque had a couple of big moments. Obviously, Clemens had big moments. Listen, I know CC in 2009. I lived it. I know it. But Andy Pettit, to me, how in the world can you tell the stories of the 90s and the early 2000 Yankees, right? Which were, by every definable term, a dynasty. Dynastic, period. How could they, first of all, not only Pettit, but how could the team itself not have greater representation in the Hall of Fame? Like, it's not congruent. I don't get it. Because basically what they're doing is they're saying, well, you know, we know what you saw. We know what happened, but yeah, we're not going to really pay homage to it, which to me is the height of disrespect and really the height of misrepresentation. Andy Pettit's a Hall of Famer before Mike Mussina. Are you kidding me? And that's always bothered me. And to be fair, I didn't always feel as strongly about this with Pettit. Like, I was always kind of like, yeah, maybe, you know, the numbers aren't quite. But I was living under the antiquated mindset of what the benchmarks used to be for the Hall of Fame. I mean, if we're going to adjust them up and down the board for everybody, Baines, come on in. Burt Blyleven, sure. Don Sutton, come on in. Don Sutton was never once the best pitcher in baseball. Look it up. Not once, all right? Nor was he the second or third. He just wasn't that kind of pitcher. He was somebody who was built on longevity and obviously, had a really good statistical resume. Was he better than Andy Pettitte at his job? I don't. Where's the evidence? So now you go back to these 90s Yankees, and you've got Mariano, who got 100% of the vote. You got Jeter, who got 99+% of somehow didn't get 100%, which is laughable. But the lack of representation, you're not talking about 2 championships or 1 championship, and then you get to another World Series, and then, maybe 2-3 years in a row, you get to the American League Championship Series and you fall short. Like, you're really good for half a decade and you have 1 World Series title to show for it. The Yankees, now he wasn't really, quite as instrumental in this here in 95, but Yanks were a wild card team. Yanks were a playoff team in 95. They won the World Series in 96. They won the World Series in 98. 97, if Alomar doesn't hit that home run the other way against Mo, they're winning. They didn't, but, they would have won the World Series in 97, I believe. 98, they win it. 99, they win it. 2000, they win it. 2001, they go back. They lose on a broken bat base hit. And then in 2003, they lose to a young Marlins team that just outpitched them and outplayed them. Like, I'm not here to make excuses. I'm just here to make sure that history doesn't get misrepresented, which it so clearly is. And, like, you think about any dynasty, and it's not just Pettitte, whether it's the Oakland A's who won back-to-back championships in the 70s with Chuck Finley, who was a despised owner, cheap. But think about some of the guys on that team. You had Reggie, you had Catfish, you had Raleigh Fingers, you had Bando, Sal Bando. Like, you had a lot of great Gene, I think Tennis was the catcher. Like, they had a really, really, really good team. And I think that they should have more representation in the Hall of Fame as well. So it's not just about Pettitte. What about Bernie? Like, you want to talk about maybe, all right, and you do have to incorporate this into the conversation. I'm not trying to omit it entirely. I'm just telling you what it means to me, and not just for him. So there's no Yankee bias because I told you I'd put Bonds in. Clemens, all these guys, Alex, right? They should be in. Now, how in the world does a switch-hitting center fielder who hit for average, hit for power? I always thought Bernie was an overrated defender. He could go get it. He had a Brandon Nimmo arm in center. He had no arm. He had a wet noodle for an arm. But Bernie was, a high contact, high average power when everybody was juicing, and I could just assume that he wasn't, right? And Bernie Williams, on his first year of eligibility, got 9% of the vote and dropped off shortly thereafter. What? How does that make any sense? The star center fielder who was in the middle of the batting order for championship after champion and big moment after big moment, not even a modicum of respect in terms of possibly getting into the Hall of Fame. So these are problems that I have with the Hall of Fame. I'm really happy for Andrew Jones. He deserves it. I'm really happy for Carlos Beltran. He deserves it. Do not tell me that somebody like Pettitte or Bernie, that they didn't deserve, at the very least, a whole hell of a lot more respect. And I believe in the case of Pettitte, enshrinement, and in the case of Bernie, flip a coin, And listen, you want to even throw this further down the road. How about Posada? Now, Posada wasn't the catcher on the first couple of championships. You got to factor that in. That was Girardi. And Girardi had that big triple. I was at the game, the clincher, 96 against the Braves when he hit that ball to center, which probably should have been caught. But he was the catcher early on for those first couple of championships. But Jorge Posada got less than 5%, and he fell off the ballot immediately. Switch hitting catcher, power, and durable, and a champion. And the numbers are there. It's not like the guy was hitting 13 home runs, and I'm trying to, a lot of catchers didn't hit a lot of home runs. This guy hit 15 and he won, put him in. Look at his numbers. I mean, he had seasons where his OPS was 880, 870, 910. I just don't understand the lack of rhyme or reason when it comes to the Hall of Fame. So I'm confused. I'm bothered by it. I guess as the saying goes, you can't fight City Hall because nothing's changing. It's only getting worse. Like, there's an overcorrection with certain things, and there's a complete ignoring of other things that I can say, and I just did, are more pertinent than the things that they're now choosing to elevate and illuminate. It's insane. Like, imagine, guys, here's a better way to look at it, right? Look at it this way. So imagine, depending upon how old you are, it's all relative. So for me, take the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s, right? Baseball I did not see. And then obviously everything before that, right? And you're a fan of your team, right? You could be a Red Sox fan, you could be a Yankee fan, be a Met fan, be an Oriole fan, be a Philly fan, any fan, doesn't matter. It's not just New York specific, right? And your team in a span of 5-6 years won 4 championships. And your 3 or 4 hitter is nowhere near the Hall of Fame. And he wasn't like injury prone, he wasn't overrated. He didn't hit 7th. Like, it just doesn't make sense. And it's getting worse. I mean, it really, really is. At DNY Cest. What up, man? Posada was the greatest switch hitting catcher of all time until Cal Raleigh. Comparable numbers to other Hall of Fame catchers. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I don't understand what is now a point of emphasis. What is being marginalized? What is being overstated? What is being, I don't know. All I know is what I've seen. And it's not like the Yankees won 2. And like we're trying to stretch these boundaries. I'm not even saying put Tino in. I'm not like I've got my line of delineation. Although when and he's not a Hall of Famer, and I'm not going to make an argument that he should be, but just like pragmatically, again, if you take that example of any team that you root for, if they had a treasure chest of championships and your power hitting first baseman, I know that Fielder played in '96 out in Atlanta with no DH. I get that, but Tino was in the middle of everything. I mean, mostly everything. And like, you don't even hear his name. It really is incredible to me. It's bothersome. So they got to get their act together, but they're not going to. What are they going to do? They're going to finally figure this out and finally switch it up. Hey, let me get J-Rod in for a sec. J-Rod, you still awake there, buddy? How you doing, Jay?
What's up? How's it going?
Everything. We're gonna hit you with the quiz pretty soon. So
all right.
Now
I'm getting prepared.
Well, I mean, the preparation should have already occurred.
It should have been years ago, in the making.
Yeah, exactly. Because like when you tell me I'm getting prepared, that implies that as I'm getting ready to jump into this, you might not be fully ready. Now, I'm actually hoping that you either get them all right. I'm like, all right, look at this. The boy wonder. We get them all wrong, so I can mock you and we can have fun. Like, to me, somewhere in between is not what we're looking for. By the way,
either or.
Let me pop this guy real quick. Let's go Mets. I'm going to get to the Mets in a bit. Obviously, Luis Robert. I'm going to get to the Mets. Bichette's going to be introduced today. Samuel Lamb-2 D2S. Appreciate the pop there, buddy. Thank you very much. All right, so before I get to the quiz, and let me find the quiz, and it's not incredibly hard, although for you it could be. What is your definition of Hall of Famer? You're a lot younger. You process these things differently. New generation. When you, especially baseball, football is different. It's because the way the football situation, for those who don't know, very quickly, basically, you get the finalists and then you get somebody who's your champion, whether it's a beat writer, somebody who covered you. You go in a room and you basically make a case. Like Gary Myers has done that for Tiki. I think he did it for Eli as well. And then you basically try to convince, and Eli is going to be easier than Tiki, even though I think Tiki should and will eventually get in. You've got to basically espouse the virtues of that player and get the group to vote on it. Like, it's very different than casting a ballot. It seems a little unofficial. That's like Survivor. Like, it's kind of tribal. A little bit. Yeah, it is a little tribal. That's true. So what is your definition of a baseball Hall of Famer?
I mean, for baseball Hall of Fame, I'd say definition got to be statistically, significant. As well as I'd say cultural impact, I think is pretty important in terms of like, the impact you left on the game, the impact you left on fans.
Okay.
Your name, I think not name recognizability, although, for me, I guess that'd play a bit of a part. But I think, having people being able to vouch for, okay, this person impacted the game. Fans can sort of see statistically, the championships lineup, All-Stars lineup. And I think that's kind of the definition of a Hall of Famer.
I think that's a good job. I think you laid that out pretty well. You hit a couple of different bullet points that I would have incorporated, and I do incorporate as well. All right, so before we get to the quiz, let me ask you this, just to kind of thread it a little deeper and get a little more specific. Do you place more value in somebody who plays a long time and eventually gets to either surpasses the threshold of wins or hits, whatever it might be, benchmarks, home runs, but most of the career was never one of the best players clearly in the game, or somebody like a Mattingly or an Albert Bell or others that Bernard King for the Knicks, even though he is in the Hall of Fame. guys like that were clearly, indisputably one of the 2 or 3 best in the game during their prime years, but injury or circumstance wiped out the back end, and the stats in totality aren't fully there. What's more important to you?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I mean, I think you obviously need a combination of both. Obviously a time where you were kind of at a bit of like a peak statistically within the league, but also you continue that over, a long period of time. I think when you compare it to like an NBA, you look at like a Derrick Rose kind of situation where you're going, okay, is he a Hall of Famer because of like his small period of greatness? And for me, I think I would still, especially in the Basketball Hall of Fame, you'd obviously give it to him. I think,
sure,
based on other criteria, potentially not. But I'd say when you're defining a true Hall of Fame career and what makes it recognizable and memorable, I think that longevity does play a massive part in it.
Okay. I would rather, like, to me, somebody like Baines, who was a perfect encapsulation of the longevity. I saw basically his entire career, and not once was Harold Baines ever even remotely close to being one of the best players in the game. Like, guys that, when I think of Baines's, when he came up and then early into his prime, you got guys like Mattingly and Brett and Ricky Henderson and Mike Schmidt still doing his thing at third base. Gary Carter, even before he came to the Mets with the Expos, like Cal Ripken, Ozzie Smith at shortstop is one of the best defensive players of all time. Dale Murphy for a couple of years, back-to-back MVPs, guys like that. So I listen, ideally, you have both. You have 3,000 knocks or 500 bombs where you hit 300 and you win an MVP or two and you're a 10 or 11 or a 12-time All-Star. But if given the choice, somebody like Mattingly or somebody like Bernard King or even Albert Bell versus somebody like a Baines type that just, accrued a ton of stats, but really never distinguished himself at that high level or the highest of level, I would go for the former rather than the latter. But that's a personal preference. All right, good job. So at least everybody knows that you're intelligent. You put out that vibe. He speaks clearly. He speaks coherently. He formulates thoughts well. Now's the real test here. Now's the real test.
Let's get ready.
And the reason I'm going to do this, if you guys missed yesterday's show, and it's obviously up on the YouTube page there, what unknowingly, like, he wasn't trying to be offensive, wasn't trying to be rude, wasn't trying to be disrespectful. I mentioned Mattingly's name, as I will do often. Anytime I can insert Mattingly's name into anything, you're going to hear it, trust me. And as you can tell by the jersey behind me, and he said something flippantly like, who's that? Or Mattingly what?
I said, whoever it is. Whoever it is. It was bad. Someone made the comment about the Carmine thing. I went back, watched that scene. It was legitimately the same exact kind of thing. It was hilarious.
That was a great text. The little Carmine reference when they get everybody together. And oh man, and Tony flips out on him for saying what he said. Very similar. I like. By the way, have you seen every Sopranos? You're young.
Yeah.
You jumped into it
multiple times.
You really
huge Sopranos fan.
Right.
We
so
could get into that.
Even if you bomb on this, what you're going to, your affinity for Sopranos is a great thing. Are you a Rocky fan?
All right. I've seen the first one years ago, but I've got a refresher. It was like a childhood me and my dad kind of movie.
All right. That's acceptable. You ready for the quiz here?
Yes, sir.
All right. So basically, and I'm gonna look at them right now. I got 5 for you.
All right.
I think you'll get the first one 50-50. Next one you get wrong. Next one you get wrong. Next one's true or false. You got a chance. And then the next one will be, you're going to get it wrong. I think you get one right.
Try me.
Give it a game show music.
Let me see. Do we have that?
He hails. He's the producer of the BT Unleashed show.
There we go.
Real extensive negotiation, after real extensive conversation and pursuit of the proper person for this show, J-Rod has distinguished himself, and he is the producer, folks. So with that in mind, and let's welcome him to the show. J-Rod, how you doing, buddy? How are you, pal?
Great.
All right, so J-Rod, I've got a series of 5 questions for you to prove your understanding of me and what is important to me. Are you ready for the first question, sir?
Let's go. Drop it.
All right. What Where did Patrick Ewing go to school? What university did
Georgetown.
All right, that was the one that we're going to lay it up. It's a little 2-foot putt. 2-foot putt.
All right.
Now, this is the way you should start playing golf. We're going to go from the green backwards. It's going to get tougher, and eventually you're going to be in the rough. Like this is a little tap in, tap it in, tap-a-roo. 1 for 1. There you go. Number 2. All right. Prior to being traded to the Yankees, I believe you're going to get this one wrong. Paul O'Neill played for what team?
All right. Listen, just so you know, not looking anything up. Got the hands up.
All
right, let's throw athletics.
Okay, I was wrong. He was on the Cincinnati Reds. He was part of the Roberto Kelly trade. Now, to be fair, I don't really think that you should necessarily know that. I mean, that's a long time ago. That was in the early 90s, and but you got it wrong. Number 3. He's one of my favorites. Everybody does. What borough is Chris Mullin from?
Oh, man. Like Warriors player Chris Mullin.
Well, you could also say St. John's player, which is why I fell in love with it. I get it. Dream Team, Chris Mullin. You could say Pacers, Chris Mullin. You could say St. John's coach. You could say anything about Chris Mullin. What borough is Mully from?
All right,
where's he from?
Brooklyn.
Yes.
Let's go.
In the house. Brooklyn in the house. BK, stand up. Wow. All right, buddy. 2 for 3. He's going to keep his job here. True or false? Actually, if he gets a couple more, he might get a raise. Forget about just keeping his job. Just kidding. True or false? Mark Jackson was the last Knick to win the Rookie of the Year award. You're a basketball guy. It's a lot of years ago. Mark Jackson was the last Rookie of the Year for the Knicks. True or false?
I'm gonna say false.
Okay.
But then my
do you have an answer? Now, if you're gonna say false,
I'm trying to think of who it would be. I mean, obviously not Porzingis. I don't think.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna throw out a crazy answer.
Go backwards. No, you're on the right track. Go backwards. Your thought process is right.
I mean, it could. I don't think it's Marbury. I mean, my thought would maybe be Sprewell. Latrell's.
No, remember he was in a trade. Sprewell was in a trade.
Oh.
You're going to take the L on this one.
I'm taking the L. The L.
All right. So we're going to go with the answer is true, obviously. And by the way, like I knew this. I obviously knew it was Mark in 87 because he's one of my all-time favorite players. I didn't realize how few they had. So
yeah,
Mark Jackson won it in 87, 89, 87, 88. Ewing won it a couple of years before that, 85, 86. Prior to that, it was Willis Reed in 64, 65. So the Knicks have only had 3 Rookie of the Year. So you got the first one right. You got the second one wrong with the O'Neill and the Reds. You got the third one right. You got the fourth one wrong. All right. This one has options. It's not quite multiple choice, but there are 3 or 4 teams that you can select here. Even if you guess, the odds are better than the O'Neill one because that was one team. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. So besides the Yankees, name one other team that Joe Torre managed. Besides the Yankees. If you get this wrong, your pops is going to be pissed. I could tell. Your dad's going to be mad.
The Sox?
No, not because of that. I'm good. No,
okay.
That was a misleading. I didn't.
Sure.
I just know he's a baseball guy. So I'm going to strike. It's not the Red. I'm going to strike that from the record.
All right.
So
I'm going to go Phillies.
No. Dang. So we went 2 for 5, which quite frankly is a little bit better than I thought. We got a bonus question though for you.
All right. There we go.
How many Gold Gloves did Don Mattingly win? The all-time number for a first baseman is 11. That's Keith Hernandez. And Donnie would have had more, or at least as many. And Keith was better, but he would have gotten there if he didn't get hurt. All right. How many? He won a lot. So I'll give you a little bit of a hint. Keith, the most ever by a first baseman. Mattingly's number was what? If you get within one, we'll give you bonus.
We'll go 8.
9. We'll give you bonus.
Okay.
All right.
We'll take
we end up on a high note there. Attaboy.
There we go.
All right, Jared.
Seemed like a high number.
Here you go. You get to stay on the show. You passed the quiz. Good work. Everybody give it up for J-Rod. I was a little worried about that.
Thank you very much.
A little worried about that.
I'm glad. I mean, the Patrick Ewing one was a layup, but I'm glad you started me off with an easy one that I knew I was just going to get.
Listen, I mean, I'm here to try. Listen, you're here to make me look good. I'm here to make you look good. I'm not here to make you look bad because if you look bad, I look bad. You're an
There we
extension
go.
of the show, brother.
There
All
we
right,
go.
good job, J-Rod. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
that. And let me get to the Metsies here. By the way, keep those comments coming in. The Giants press conference obviously started with that with John Harbaugh. Phenomenal, did a great job, really impressive. Happy for the Giants, for Mr. Mara, happy for the fans. Really good day. Obviously touched on some Hall of Fame stuff. And let me get to the Mets here. So where is I just want to look one thing up here. Where is it there? All right. So listen, I don't need notes for this. I think the Mets have had this particular aspect. I think the Mets have had a really good offseason. I've said that. It's coming together. And I tell you guys, one of the things that I really try not to do, not that I never do it. Of course, I'm human. I make this mistake as well. But to me, it's largely wasted energy reacting definitively to something that is not yet complete. Like, why am I going to give you my ultimate reaction of Stearns' offseason going back a week ago or a month ago when players started getting dealt and players started leaving? Like, why would I do that? Like, to me, I got to let it go. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have a reaction when Pete signs with Baltimore. I'm not saying that. But the next step from there was he's not going to do anything. Oh, Cohen just wanted a Mason Park, whatever it's called, a Metropolitan Park. And he's all about the casinos. And look what he did. He pulled the rug and the wool underneath our eyes. And it's all a bunch of nonsense. And here we go. Wilpon is going to be cheap. Like, some of the things that were being said about the Mets, to me, were just grossly missing the mark. And I thought it was time to get rid of Nimmo. I thought it was time to get rid of Pete. Now, you really wish you had Diaz now, especially with some of these reinforcements you brought in. And I said the same thing. Like, all right, I think the Mets messed that one up for the amount of money, $3 million over 3 years for Diaz, who's one of the top 2 closers in the game. They messed that up. But not everybody's perfect. In totality, I think Stearns, as I get to now to the Luis Robert move, Bichette with the press conference, the introduction today, I think that Stearns, hold on, I have my thing there a little bit. He's had a really good offseason. Now, the Luis Robert move, to me, is a move that had to be made on a couple of levels. Number one, with him coming in, and I understand he's going to strike out a lot. He's been a little injury prone. The average has inexplicably sunk and his production sunk. I think there's life in his bat. I know he's a great fielder. I know he can run. So there's tools there. And it's a short commitment. Next year is a buyout for, I think, $5 or $6 million. You come in, and what you're doing, and this is what many of you fail to understand, and I don't get it. Well, I do, but you need to move past this. I think a lot of the confusion or the anger or the displeasure for what Stearns is doing, it's been rooted in emotion. And as I've said on previous pods, I do understand that because I'm emotional, and if the Yankees would have moved on from Mattingly, or even like if the Knicks traded Jalen Brunson, like this mess that they're in, if they're like, well, we could get better by trading Jalen, like I'd lose it because Jalen's not the problem. He's more the answer. So I understand that connection, that sentimentality. I always have it. I always will. However, understand what the Mets are doing here. The Mets are giving you as a fan a chance to have a very, very enjoyable summer and a very enjoyable season while competitive. While simultaneously, they are buying time to figure out what they have with some of these other players, whether it's a Benj, whether it's a Jet Williams, the young pitchers, obviously Sproat and Tom. McLean's different level. He's the man. I think he's great. One of those players is going to get dealt either, you would think, for Peralta or for Tariq School, but whatever. But I think that the Mets, imagine if they would have entered, and I think some of you thought that they were going to do this, that they were going to actually enter the season with, like, I don't know, Benj in center or Tyrod Taylor in center and Benj in left. Like, now you give the young player a chance to kind of ease into it. And if he flashes during the spring, I think the Mets are going to give him a chance to make this team. I think you might see a little bit of Brett Beatty out in left field, which I'm open to. He's not going to look like Todd Hundley, I can promise you that. And he's not going to look like Mike Piazza trying to play first base. He's a good athlete. He'll be fine. I mean, at the very least, he'll be average. And I would think with some reps, and he's going to have a much better arm than Nimmo. So I think that that's an option. And you look at, whether it's a Polanco, whether it's a Bichette, whether it's a Luis Robert, Lindor, obviously Soto, like, you've got 5 or 6 hitters like out of the chute that are going to give the Mets a chance to put some runs up every night. Now, I still sense some, what's the right word? I still sense some fear, some trepidation that you don't think that they're going to get pitching. Do you actually think that they're going to start the season with this pitching staff? There's no way. There's no way they're not going to have either a Peralta. I myself wouldn't sign Valdez, and I went through that one of the previous shows. I think when you cross up a catcher, you're not a guy that I want on my team intentionally. Like, it's one thing to, I'd rather you throw a glove in the stand like that dope did a couple of years ago who they cut. I'm forgetting his name. Like, I'd rather you have a moment where you lose a little self-control. Not that I like that, but to me, it's more acceptable than you as a competitor putting your teammate in harm's way willingly, because there's several checkpoints that need to occur before you throw that pitch. He thinks something soft is coming. This is what Houston, obviously. He thinks something soft is coming. You unleash a fastball. You catch him off. I mean, if that hits him in the neck well, I mean, that's it's just, it was unprofessional. Whereas, if you smash a bat or if you throw a helmet in the dugout, or even if you say the wrong thing post-game, like you really pissed off and charged up after a bad start or after a bad game, or even if you go to throw your glove at the dugout and it goes into the stands, like that's just, and again, that's the wrong thing to do, but at least in the moment, to me, I can process that better because like it was just a temporary respite from being in control, and then that's something you got to work on. But to be on a mound 60 feet 6 inches away from somebody and understand that as a left, you're about to deliver a pitch at 93, 94, and he's expecting 73, 74. You're just not a guy that I want to go to battle with. I don't trust you, and I don't respect you. So I don't want the Mets to get Valdez. And I hope that their desperation doesn't lead them to do that. To me, the better play was Suarez. I think they missed on that. Now, if you get Peralta, it's phenomenal. I think Peralta's better than both of those guys for sure. He's better than Suarez, better than Valdez. And then you couple in with Valdez some very shaky second half stats, long-term contract, little lack of character. I'm just not feeling that. And I hope the Mets don't pivot to him. But there's no way that the Mets are going to start the season with McClain as their ace, even though he's got ace-worthy stuff, and Manaea 2, and Senga 3, and Clay Holmes 4, or Peterson 4, whatever configuration. They're just not going to do it. See, what the Mets, and again, they're trying to thread this needle of being competitive now, and when you roll out in succession, Lindor, whose numbers will be there at the end of the year. He's going to be a little streaky, as he always is, but his numbers will be there. Bichette, who you're going to absolutely love. Wish the Yankees would have gotten him. Gamer, high average, clutch, dirty uniform, scrappy, big-time hitter, winner, rises to the moment. Lindor, Bichette, Soto, who's going to be even more comfortable year 2 in Queens, like Beltran, you would imagine. And Beltran's year 1, he hit 16 home runs. I mean, we're sitting here saying Soto had, some of you were saying he had a bad first year. He had some bad stretches. He started poorly, but his numbers were pretty damn good compared to Beltran. I mean, it's not even close. But, and you get to Soto, and, I don't know who's going to hit fourth. I mean, could it be a Polanco? Could it be a Robert? I'm not really sure. But then you throw in the Beatties and you throw in the Alvarez's. Now you're cooking here. Now you got a little something where night to night, if you get decent starting pitching, something the Mets could not buy most of last season, especially down the stretch, the last couple of months. I mean, you're getting 2 1/3, 3 innings, 1 2/3, 1 inning from Tong. But what you can't do, right? And this is why I know that the Mets aren't done with their moves here. They're going to get a big time pitcher. They might even get 2. They might get a big time pitcher, and then kind of whether it's a lower level trade or a signing. There's not many guys left, but somebody that you could throw that's made a lot of starts, that's thrown a lot of innings, but isn't a top of the rotation guy. But you can now protect somebody like Tong and Sproat and throw them out there when they're truly ready. Unlike last year, based on necessity and sheer desperation, throwing them out there when they had no right being out there. And I know each one of them flashed a little bit, but Tong he just didn't look mentally ready that game when he was visibly crying. He's still going through the process, man. I think he's going to be good, but he wasn't ready. And Stearns knows that. So they're trying to thread this needle of going out there and, trying to get a wild card and gauging, what is Benj about? What is Sproat about? What is Tong about? Is McClain really what we think he is? If they don't trade Beatty, can he be a left fielder? Can he be a first baseman? If they don't trade Vientos, all right. And I think that they should. I'd move on. I'm not a big Vientos fan, but because you can't run it, he doesn't have a position. And that's anti-Stearns. Like, if you can't run and you can't play defense, you're not going to be on Stearns' team, because all he talks about is run prevention, which is interesting with Bichette going to third base, but I think he'll be fine there. I think that's been overstated a little bit. If you can play shortstop and you can be in the middle of the diamond at that level, You can move 15 feet to your left and play second, and you can move 15, 20 feet to your right and play third. Eventually, you're going to figure it out. I know the arm strength is average, sometimes a little bit below. He throws right around 82.9 miles per hour on competitive plays, which obviously is not great. I think it's 20-something in baseball. That's on the lower side. It's not optimal. I get it. It's not Sean Dunston. It's not Daly Cruz. It's not, young Alex Rodriguez or Ripken. He doesn't have that arm, all right? But you can make up that arm, I think, for a lack of a plus arm in preparation, in positioning, in getting rid of the ball fast. There's going to be moments where, he dives and he's got to get up and he got to throw that bullet, really maybe by the coach's box in third base. You don't have any time to really gather yourself, and you got to unleash it, and you'll see a throw that's average. I'm not saying that that's not going to happen, but what he's going to bring to the table overall is so much more of a plus than a negative, especially it's a short-term deal, which it is. So I think they liked Luis Robert a year ago. You cannot run somebody like Tyrod Taylor out there every day. You just can't have a center fielder who can't hit. If he's your fourth guy, it's phenomenal because he's a great defensive player. And then he's a gritty, grimy, good clubhouse guy. So I do think that they'll I think the Mets are going to be a lot more competitive than I thought. Think about this. Like, there was a point before the Bichette move where I'm sitting here saying, I said it on the show, right now it's 75-win team. It's one of the weaker rosters in baseball. You have a closer, but he's not what you had. Your rotation's a mess until further addressed. And, you got two reliable hitters in terms of Lindor and Soto. Everything else is still to be determined, or, you might do this and you could do that, and the contract's offered to this guy or this young player might be that. That's not how you win. But I think that you are going to, at some point, maybe it doesn't happen this year because I still need to see them make get the pitching. I think at some point, many of you are going to owe Stearns an apology. I really believe that. Now, whether or not you'll be man enough to actually make it and come correct and raise your hand up, and you got to do that when you're wrong. You have to be, and I'll do that on this show. When I'm wrong, I've always done that. Like, I've always been transparent. Like, I don't have an opinion and then pretend I never said it like a lot of people do. I'm going to make mistakes. And when you're confident and when you are on air every day and when you present things in a definitive way, as I often do, you're going to miss the mark sometimes. So if I expect me to be able to say, a public figure, I was wrong, why can't you do it? I think that you have to. And I think that you will with David Stearns. That's what I think is going to happen there. All right, let me get a couple of these tweets here. I got a little note on the Johnny's game there. And by the way, you can play Tyrod Taylor at left field. Like, if it doesn't work out with Beatty and you want to have him out there a little bit, or Benj doesn't make the team, that's fine. I think it's pretty good. Let's see here. I just explained this at a million J's 3242. Bichette's the worst shortstop. Why do you think you can play third base? Well, number one, third base is easier. Number one, I don't understand how people don't understand this. I don't. Now, it's one thing to say that Bichette's going to go from an awful shortstop to Mike Schmidt at third base. Nobody's sitting here saying that. But if you don't think, and it's not a knock, this is just the reality of it. If you don't think that he can become a functional third baseman, you didn't play any baseball. And that's just, I'm not trying to talk down to you. I didn't play in the majors. But if you think that, you just didn't play baseball at a fairly competitive level. Because if you know anything about, like, on the most rudimentary level, the best athlete is always at shortstop. The one who knows the game the most, the one who's generally the quickest, the one who's got the best hands. From the time you're 6, 7, 8 years old, that's the kid who's playing shortstop. And that's the dude who's playing shortstop in the bigs. Now, like everything, there's a pecking order. There's some guys who are elite, there's some guys who are average, and there's some guys who suck. And you put up with it because he's a masher. Well, Bichette, like, to go to third base, guys, this is basic stuff. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Number one, you've got to worry about less. You don't have to worry about going up the middle and in the hole. And it's quick. Now, it's a longer throw from third base, and a couple of bunts, whatever, a couple of swinging bunts. You got a lefty who throws in. That's why the Yankees getting McMahon to play third base defensively. You like to see him not hit 210 and strike out every night twice. But at least from a defensive point of view, I think it was so important because you got Fried, you got Rodon, you got those lefties, those balls bearing in on the ankles of righties. They're going to bang that into the ground. And you need somebody who's competent at third base. Bichette's going to catch the baseball. I just think it's been grossly overstated how bad he's going to be at third base. He's just not. And if he is, then I'll say, all right, man, I don't know what the hell happened, but he's still going to hit 290 with 30-something doubles and 20-something home runs, and he's going to be clutch. So you put up with it, no doubt. You definitely put up with it. How about a little Johnny's gritty win last night at CLR 8810? Yeah, it was. Kate May, appreciate that. Love the show. I think you checked in yesterday. Thank you very much. By the way, guys, as I've told you, listen, we're building this thing up. It's pretty much, I'd say when we first started, going back to the first show, if I was to give you like a 1 to 10 scale based on the camera, based on the quality of the microphone, based on the background, based on the acoustics, based on the lighting. I mean, that first show was a 1 out of 10. It really was. I just had a lot to say. So I'm like, I'm starting the podcast here. As you can now tell, the camera, we have an upgraded camera. The microphone's obviously been taken care of. The graphics are much better thanks to Jared. J-Rod's the producer. Now he's part of the show now, which means we're going to start bringing some guests in and being able to do some other stuff. I know he's working on some musical elements for the open, for the close, do some stuff there. The phone number, that's going to be the greatest undertaking. As I've said many times, we've got the phone number, but that's a different interface, and that's going to be more technical stuff that Jared and I have to work out. It's not like, all right, we got the number, pop them in, producers here, let's get the phones going. It's a little deeper than that. It's a little trickier than that. It is doable, and we're going to do it, so that will come. And then the next thing we got to do is the studio redesign, and I've got the two logos that you guys know about. One is a little darker. One is a little bit lighter. The matter of fact, my guy just texted me this morning, ironically, where he's got the two samples, and he's going to come over, and we got to see exactly where it's going to be in relation to the back wall there. In terms of it's going to be the whole wall, but I mean the logo, so that I'm not obscuring it with my head, but it's still visible in the camera shot. So there's a lot of things that we got to do. But yeah, I mean, it makes it fun. It makes it exciting. Obviously, you guys subscribe it, like it, comment, get that traction going. And just to finish the thought on that tweet, it was a very gritty, or text, not tweet, very gritty St. John's win. So we went, I went to a restaurant in town last night. My son, two of his buddies on his travel basketball team, God, they got smoked last night. And everybody, the dads, the kids, all Seton Hall fans, right? We're in Jersey. So it makes sense, and we're the St. John's crew. And I wasn't working the game last night. There's a couple of games I don't work. They get Tariq or a former player in there. So I wasn't scheduled to do the game. So, I mean, we're watching this travel game, and I'm saying, when is this thing over? You want to talk about non-competitive? This team was terrific. We were down 19-3. I'm like, we got some players. Like, this team was just there's a difference between young players who play all year round in basketball and then players who are pretty good in basketball and love basketball but play two other sports. And that's what we were up against last night. These kids were banging threes. These kids, as soon as they got the ball, fast break, good spacing on the wing, a lot of plays, backdoor, setting screens, like talking rotations on defense. They were good. So I just couldn't wait to get to the restaurant, get myself a beer, and get myself something to eat and watch St. John's Seton Hall. And that would have been a devastating loss for St. John's, not in terms of the NCAA tournament. Even if they would have lost, they would have still gotten in. But St. John's really put a lot of, I want to get one thing I'm looking for here, put a lot of work in to get themselves back into a very favorable spot. Where is it? In terms of the way they are perceived here by the NCAA tournament committee. Now, last year they were 2 seed. They got bumped in the second round. And it's my hope if they continue to grow here that while they won't be a 31-win team at a 2 seed, they're going to be better prepared to actually advance deeper into the tournament. And last night was the kind of game that would have really set you back analytically because, they had the 3 quad 1 road wins, which really got them into top 25 net and really brought them. I know that I think I said this yesterday. There's this, for those of you, even if it's not St. John's, want to check out your team. There's this, just Google bracket matrix, right? And it's basically a database of all Lenardi, all the CBS, Palm, whatever, that actually track this and put out their seedings. And what they do is they aggregate it, and then they kind of have like a hybrid, and they give you an average seed for each of the teams that they think is a tournament team right now. And before St. John's went on this run, they were clearly in, but they were in the 8-9 game. And now I checked this morning. I check every day on a couple teams, and they have now moved up to the 2nd 6 seed. But if they would have lost last night, even with the back-to-back quad one road wins and then a 20-point beatdown against Marquette and then another quad one road win, like because they flushed a few big wins down the chute early in the season, they would have lost last night. I think they would have dropped back to that 8-9 game, and then you're one other bad loss away from, maybe something really going in the wrong direction. So they just did not look good. See, and I knew Seton Hall, I saw that spread. It opened at like 12 and it got bet down smartly. Some Seton Hall money to 10.5, or I think it went off at 10.5 or 10. And I'm sitting there, with the guys who I'm good friends with, my son's teammates, and I've coached with them baseball. Great guys, become really good friends, Seton Hall fans. And I'm like, that spread's crazy. Like, this is going to be a street fight. I got too much respect for Shaheen Holloway and for that program and how they fight and the rivalry. Seton Hall's really owned St. John's in the rivalry. I think that I saw something. I think that they were 4-14. Is that right? I know they won last year, but very rarely win in Newark. Yeah, I think it was 4 wins in their last 18 games against Seton Hall. So I knew the spread was ridiculous. I knew it would be a street fight. I knew it would be tight. And then St. John's fell behind. They were down by I want to say, they were down 38-32 at the half. They were down 6. And then Seton Hall rips off a 9-0 run to start the second half. And I'm sitting there saying, I'm probably going to lose this game. And it was a very deflating feeling because they had worked so hard to get to a place that really began to resemble what many of us thought, national commentary, what St. John's would be this year. And they just went bonkers, man. They bunkered down offensive rebounds. They got 20 offensive rebounds. Hopkins was doing his thing. Mitchell was playing well. Dylan Darling had a massive steal and a couple of really big buckets. Sannon was very good down the stretch, made some big plays there. And they really did it without Zuby having a vintage game. Zuby had fouls, and Zuby didn't play particularly well, missed a lot of shots. And Ian Jackson did nothing. He was 0 for 3. I don't think he even scored a point. And he's been playing very well. So that shows you the depth of St. John. When they were taking the game back from Seton Hall, it was Hopkins, Darling, Sannon, Ruben Prey, Dylan Mitchell. Like, it wasn't Ian Jackson and Zuby and some of the other players who play big minutes. So really, really good win for St. John's. And I've got to go to St. John's today to film right after this, to film the Red Storm report. So episode 3 already. Good job there. Let's see here. Let me pop in a few of these myself. I got a little something on the Johnnies. Yeah, this is going to be a blast. Jerry Nelson, 1236. What's up, Jer? Can't wait for you and Sal, the show tomorrow with Booney. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Boy, I would love the Yankees to do a little something before Sal's feeling himself on stage tomorrow night. He's got to be feeling better about the Mets than I feel about the Yankees right now. Yankees haven't done anything. And I'm just really, have you ever had, think about the pursuit of a player, if and when, and now that the Mets got Luis Robert, I'm not worried about the Mets taking Bellinger, but you want to really make a power move? Jeez. Go out there, get Bellinger. You have an outfield of Bellinger, Luis Robert, and Soto. And if Polanco's not working out at first base, you can put him at first base. That would be, and then you get a pitcher. Oof. That would be a crazy offseason by the Mets there. But I'm so turned off by the tone of and not Bellinger, but just Boris and the expectation for what, I know it's his job, but there's no reality really attached to the pursuit of a 7-year deal. He's not that kind of player. And he just hijacks every offseason here. And not just with the Yankees, but a lot of clients here. So whenever, and I'm assuming Bellinger will sign with the Yankees, maybe Toronto, but I'm going to say the Yankees, as I've said all along. But I'm not going to go nuts. It's not going to be some euphoric explosion wow, Yankees got Bellinger. It's going to be, okay, so you retained what you had a year ago. What's next? Really, what's next there? No, but we'll have a good time tomorrow. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to seeing Boone. Haven't seen Boone since, talked to him a few times. Haven't seen him since, let me see. I saw him on opening day. We did our show out there. What else? I don't know. We did, I saw him there. I think I saw him. Oh, I saw him over the summer when the Little League in town went to Yankee Stadium. I saw him briefly there. Kids get to walk along the dirt track, the warning track, the outfield. And I was able to text him. I said, hey, I know you're busy before the game. If you could pop out and you want to say hi to the kids. And he did it. That's the kind of stand-up guy Boone is. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to seeing Sal for sure. And we'll have a good time, man. It'll be a lot of fun. That is tomorrow night at the Vogel Theater in Red Bank. It's just going to be, we've never done this before. My wife has put an overtime on this with sponsorship, and my guy Mortucci wait till you see and wait till you hear Martucci's rendition of New York, New York from Sinatra. That's how we're going to start the show. Yeah, it's going to be great. It's going to be absolutely a blast. Really looking forward to that. How about this one? Yeah, a little pitching here at Avery Summit -U1R. Yanks and Mets both should take a flyer on Zach Gallen. Yeah, he's fine. I like him. I don't love him. But yeah, I think the Mets more than I don't think the Yankees need Zach Gallen. I think the Mets need, Zach Gallen and somebody else, ideally from a pitching perspective. Like, that's the one thing I'm not worried about with the Yankees pitching. I know it's a little bit of a risk here and a little bit of a leap of faith that everything's going to work out favorably here, that, Garrett Cole comes back healthy, Rodon comes back healthy, Schlittler's the same guy, Clark Schmidt eventually comes back and is healthy. Max Fried year 2 is as good as year 1, maybe even hopefully a little bit better when he had that bad month or those bad 5 starts, but otherwise really, really good. Yanks pitching starting is on lock here, at least potentially. And you've got to get more for the bullpen. That'll be really, really nice. And, I think if you could do that, you got yourself set up to do something really big as hopefully you get another stick in here and the Yankees hit enough. Mets would be foolish to trade for Skubal. Why? Use the chips for somebody else. Sign Skubal in December. Well, I mean, do you really think he's not going to go to the Dodgers? Here's the thing, too. You've got to now calculate this. You have to, because it's not just about money, because Cohen, unlike Hal, has been willing to write these big checks. Think about what he offered, Tucker, and think about what he gave Bichette. I mean, 60 million, 40 mil. I mean, wow. So the thought is, and I understand this is a practical thought, like, why give up prime chips here for Skubal when there's no assurances, because he's just not going to sign an extension when he gets here. There's no assurances that he's going to remain a Met. So it's a 1-year rental. You're not necessarily ready to win a World Series. Why would you do that now? Well, I think in most situations you would. You certainly wouldn't give up McClain at all for a rental. And, the reason why you would do it is didn't work with the Yankees and Soto, but the reason you do it is you get him in, you get him acclimated. Hopefully he loves it. And then obviously the money will be there commensurate with all the other offers. And then based on his year with the Mets or whomever trades for him, he just feels a connection and he wants to make it his home, and you got a leg up. So as long as the contract stuff meets up with the Dodgers, Toronto, the Yankees, and they'll be in on Skubal, whatever. If he likes it in Queens and he thinks it's a trajectory that he can obviously help clearly, but also punctuate with the championship, and he likes it, well, you got the leg up, as I said. But the problem with that now, and that is a very logical thought, and I really have subscribed to that for a long time. Like, get him in, let him show, especially from a Yankee point of view, get him in, let him feel, let him get around Yankee Stadium, the fans, the buzz, all that stuff. Well, it didn't work with Soto. And somebody like Skubal, I'd be less willing and less prepared to run the risk of not trading for him now and then just having to, stand toe-to-toe with the Dodgers and to a lesser extent the Yankees and maybe Toronto and maybe 1 or 2 others. And, with the recent evidence that everybody's going to the Dodgers. I mean, you really want to mess around and risk that? So that's one reason why I disagree with that last text there. Doesn't guarantee anything that if you trade for him that you're assured to sign him. But I do think it gives you a better chance. If you're not willing to take that chance, I get it. That's fine. But okay, I just think you've got to be ultra aggressive here. I really do. What is this here? Michael Baker, 7308. What's up, Mike? Again, guys, tell me where you are texting from. I like to know that. It gives me a chance to either morph into a story or have a little bit of fun. Oh, I remember playing there, or I played golf there, or I know this guy there, or whatever. I went to dinner there. It just makes for to keep it more conversational. Michael, how about we stop mocking the boy genius, as you know, who loves to insult? I think that's about Beningo. Maybe the Mets can win now that the ones we never won with are gone. Yeah, I got you. I think you're talking about Joe. Joe dubbed them. I mean, Joe's all over him. I personally think it's unfair, but I'm not Joe. I'm me. So I don't really care what Joe says. It's fine. The boy wonder, mocking him. He's been all over him, but Joe, who is amazing and I love, Joe's deal. Joe slants toward that negative emotion. And sometimes with certain things, so will I. I don't see it that way. I disagree. Fundamentally, I think Joe's wrong. And I don't agree. But that doesn't mean that ultimately I'm going to be right. And by the way, that's Joe's emotion now. And he's certainly entitled to do that. I'd love to know if Joe still feels that way, with Bichette, with Robert. A lot of that is emotionally driven, with guys like Pete and Nimmo and Diaz. I understand that. I do. And by the way, Joe just has a microphone or a podcast. Joe's not alone in feeling that way. That's why I've told you, all of you, I think there's a large congregation of people, like a massive amount, more than 50% of the Met fan base that's going to owe Stearns an apology. I truly believe that. I'm not just saying that. I mean, the guy was brought here to build the team the way, he built it in Milwaukee, and to accent the roster with pieces that financially he couldn't do in Milwaukee. And I think that if he does that, then I really, really think that he's going to be somebody who's revered and is going to have a chance to win a championship here. Jim Horn 10. What's up, Jim? Kind of looks like Sal and me a little bit. Anyway, the steroid class should be in the Hall of Fame. Every era has their version of cheating. It's to tell the story of baseball. Bonds and all the others should be, and everybody knows what happened. Yeah, Jimmy, I'm with you at this point. To me, it's a very basic point that I get to very quickly here. As I said before, if you can't tell the story of the dynastic Yankees without Andy Pettitte, right, which you can't, if you want to be sincere and accurate and genuine to what actually occurred, well, how can you tell the history of baseball without a Bonds, without a McGuire, certainly without an Alex Rodriguez, who's one of the best natural baseball players of all time? Listen, do I have separation myself between somebody? And forget about Alex, because Alex can run, he can field, he can do everything. And even forget about Bonds, because he can run, he can didn't quite have the arm and the defensive prowess that Alex had at shortstop in the outfield, but athlete. To me, the debate could come into play, and it does for me, and this is where my line of demarcation. Like Mark McGuire, Hall of Famer, even with all the cheating and the cartoonish physique and the ridiculous home run totals. I mean, it's really insane. But Mark McGuire at USC and on the 84 Olympic team, and as a rookie, when he was very thin, hit 49 home runs for the A's. I mean, look it up. Mark McGuire stepped onto a baseball field. He was bam, bam. I'm sure Mark McGuire, when he was 6, 8, 10, 12, 15, 18, 20, and beyond, was the best power hitter on any field that he stepped on. Wood bat, metal bat, T-ball, big-time college ball, Pac-12, minors, majors. That's Mark McGuire. He's got brute raw strength that is very rarely replicated, in baseball. It's different. Whereas somebody like Sammy Sosa, to me, who is much more a byproduct of the chemical enhancement, I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. I'm old enough to have seen Sammy Sosa play right field for the White Sox against the Yankees back in the day. Wasn't that guy? So what is Sammy Sosa without home runs, without steroids? What is he? I'm not saying he's not a good player. He's not an all-timer. There's no way. I mean, how many 60-plus home run seasons did he have? 3 or 4? Like, you look at the whole, you see Judge, you see Roger Maris, you see, you see McGuire. You see Sosa like 3 or 4 times. What are we doing? To me, that was not a natural depiction of Sammy Sosa as a baseball player. He is a much more heightened version than he would have been without cheating. So I don't need Sammy Sosa ever to be anywhere near a Hall of Fame. McGuire in, Clemens in, A-Rod in, Bonds in. That's my opinion. Some of you disagree. Some of you still hold on to the notion. And I'm not mocking you with this voice, but he cheated, can't put him in. The rules are the rules. And then, and then I could also, I can't because I got to get rolling here, but I could then launch into, all right, well, I mean, there's so many different points in baseball history. What about the dead ball era? What about this? You might not like hearing this, but this is the reality of it. What about all the white players that played in a league where there were no minorities? And, look at somebody like Hank Aaron and Willie Mays and some of the and Bonds. Some of the best players are black, not to mention Latino. And, for all those years, it was just white players. And, I don't know what the accomplishments would be. I'm not saying that somebody like Ty Cobb wouldn't be amazing, or, somebody like Babe Ruth wouldn't be amazing. Of course they would be relative to their era, but would they be quite as amazing? I don't know the answer to that, but it's provoking thought. And to me, it's a real thing you have to insert. And then the next thing is, well, how many thieves and criminals and drug addicts and, wife beaters and whatever other, are in the Hall of Fame. So the morality is what bothers me. Don't be selectively moral. You know what I mean? If you're gonna hold on to that morality clause, do it with everybody. Just don't be selective. Wow, this guy took steroids, but this guy's an old-timer. Let's not just revere the guys who played 100 years ago that we know were thought to be racist, like Ty Cobb, or or cheaters or criminals. You know what I mean? So I want to hear it. I don't want to hear it in an incomplete fashion. I'm down to hear the whole thing, but again, you can't just parachute it. I think a lot of you do. I think it's changed a little bit, but I still notice it's like you gravitate to one thing and you really hold on to that so tightly as you present your case for, Hall of Fame candidacy or not. But then other things that are of equal import, you ignore, or you push in the corner of the room. It's not consistent because that's not the big picture. And the big picture of baseball, as I wrap it up, is that if you are a great figure, if you are a luminary of the game, if you have the requisite stats, if you transcended the game, even if you cheated, because that's the era in which you were competing in, well, then you know what? You belong in the Hall of Fame. And listen, one thing about this show, I've never said this I've said it once or twice on the radio. I'm going to say it now, and then I'm going to really sign off here. You know how close I was to taking steroids? I admit it freely. I was this close to taking steroids. I actually had somebody on campus, and I scrounged together the money, all right, where I was going to do 2 or 3 cycles in preparation for a baseball season my sophomore year. And I don't know what my ultimate checkpoint was, why I didn't do it. Maybe, thankfully, sensibility won out, but I could tell you back then I wasn't thinking that clearly. It's not like I was some mature 19-year-old who thought about the world and thought about me being at this age. I didn't think about that at all. I mean, I really didn't. I thought about what can I do to become a better base, to get faster, to get stronger. And that was also in the era when everybody was yoked up and, there were guys, football team, other athletes on campus, guys just wanting to look good at the beach. A lot of people were taking juice, So I actually almost did it. And I really do think the determining factor was it wasn't even about a morality thing or a fear of like organs or, shriveling that thing shriveling up, which you hear about. I wasn't worried about that stuff. I was worried about, or I came to the conclusion, and I'm proud of myself for doing this because it was the right, honest conclusion. I came to the determination that no matter how many cycles I took, it wasn't going to be good enough to play in the bigs. I knew it. Now, would it have given me, a year or two A ball, high A, maybe double A? Maybe in the right situation, maybe. But I just knew that about myself, and I was able to be honest with myself about that. But I say that, not to sound like what an amazing figure, he didn't do it, what an amazing person. No, again, I was this close. I had the person, I had the money, and I was ready. I was ready to do it because I was working out a lot. And I think that especially when I'm in college, I graduated mid-90s, 96, where, now the steroid era is like everywhere you look, everybody's absolutely yoked up and just jacked. So imagine being in the majors. Forget about me. It's some, middling, mid-major Division I school that's not winning a lot and not putting up great stats, me, in college. Imagine being in the minors and being in, let's say, double A and going to camp and looking around and seeing 30 guys that are, around your age, a year or two older, a year or two younger, 7 or 8 play the same position. Organizationally, you're all chasing the same thing. You're chasing the call up, you're chasing the elevation, you're chasing the money, and you're chasing, wealth that is going to benefit multiple generations, if not every generation, if you invest it properly, really. Perpetuity, if you handle it right and you make enough money. So, I mean, how do you not do it at that point? Now, the thing with somebody like Alex and Barry Bonds is that they didn't really need it. Whereas others that, I'm not just going to start recklessly throwing names out because I don't want to be that guy, but there's a lot of people that we think did it that were never proven to have done it, that wound up going from average ball players to guys who wound up securing $25-30 million. They got the bag. And you know what? Is it really, if you think about it, did they really truly do the wrong thing? If their liver doesn't conk out and their organs don't just shrivel up and they don't die, God forbid, early, you could say they did the right thing. But the pressure of that, like, I just don't think that it's often enough looked at through the proper prism of the context of the era in which almost everybody was messing around at some point with that. And I was right there thinking about it. And if I was better, I would have done it. So I'm going to always keep it real with that. I got to roll. Hey, appreciate you guys hanging out. J-Rod, you get to stick around for a little bit. He passed the test. Good job by my boy Jared. Jared was good today. Really good Giant discussion. Really good Hall of Fame. Mets discussion. Little Johnny's for you as well. Tomorrow's the BT and Sal live show. It's going to be a blast. Can't wait. I've got to get out to St. John's today. I got to record that show. Like it, subscribe, spread the word. Jared's doing a really good job on the shorts and the thumbnails, just the overall presentation. And that's going to even get better and better and better. It will do more and more and more. And that's it. So I got to roll here. I got to hit the road, get out to Queens, guys. Have an outstanding Wednesday. I appreciate it. I appreciate you. BT Unleashed in the house every Monday through Friday at 10. And then obviously when we get some breaking news there, we'll jump in, we'll parachute in, and we'll do our thing. So have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow at 10. Bye-bye.